Thank you and welcome to the show for today. You are watching Perspectives and I am host Alana McLaughlin. This morning on the show I have Toney and Dr. Danielle Jenkins here to discuss the Good Life Team and Fit Enterprises. They're here to discuss their backgrounds, educations, their careers, and ultimately the impact that they seek to leave on local Tennessee communities. And I just want to thank you guys for being here this morning. And I want to get this ball rolling.
Fantastic. We are so excited and thrilled to be here.
Thanks, Alana. Toney, tell me about baby Toney years. And Dr. Danielle, I'm going to come to you as well. But set up that early life, what childhood looked like for you.
Childhood for me was a house full of laughter and play. I have 3 older brothers and 1 younger brother and 2 cousins that were just basically another brother and sister in our home. So it was a lot of playing, a lot of laughter, but in that essence, I was one of the shyer kids that wasn't very vocal. I just kind of was a daddy's boy, just a small, quiet person.
And I want to talk about your parents, kind of set that up for me. What did that look like? Tell me kind of about your relationship and kind of what they did while you were growing up.
My father was in the military and my mom was a stay-at-home mom / part-time employee for different various companies. But she always had a tight-knit watch on all of us. And when she couldn't watch us, she had her friends and her brothers and sisters always keep an eye on us all around town. So we grew up in the South, and so it was everybody knew everyone, everybody watched out for each other's kids, and that was just the way we were raised.
And Dr. Danielle, kind of those same baby years, set that up for me.
Yeah, so I'm the oldest. My brother is 2 years younger than I am. I grew up in Los Angeles, California, and our household, it was just a lot of fun, a lot of love. I grew up with both parents. You know, back when I grew up, kids played out on the street. You know, nowadays the kids are playing with electronics. So my childhood was in the streets, making up games, playing with games, hopscotch, jacks. I know I'm dating myself, but it was a very loving environment, just a lot of play, a lot of fun, and a lot of love from my parents.
And I want to talk about early faith backgrounds, and either one of you can jump in, but just tell me what that early Christian faith in the household looked like for you guys.
It was very ironic in our family. My father came from a Baptist background. My mother was a Methodist background. And so we, as children, we would go to hear my uncle preach at a Baptist church. And then the following Sunday, we would go to church with my mom and be at a Methodist church. And the worship experiences were completely different. We gravitated, or at least my spirit gravitated towards my uncle's preaching in the Baptist church. And so now my wife and I are a part of a outstanding ministry out in California, the California Worship Center. Our senior pastor is Warren S. Campbell, and our first lady is Erica Campbell from Mary.
That's so cool.
Yes.
Wow. And Dr. Danielle, set up that same like early Christian faith for me. Wow.
Yeah, well, my parents definitely were believers, and you know, it wasn't an option. You had to go to church. And so a lot of, you know, in our culture, you know, you go to church. That's how you're brought up in the church. So, you know, there wasn't any questions about do we go, right? You go to church, and my parents say you don't go to church, you don't get to play when you get home. So we went to church. We were heavily involved, you know, in children's choir and things like that. So again, that involvement in church, it was just a part of our culture, a part of our family. So it was a very great upbringing. You know, that built that faith up.
That traditional upbringing.
Yes, absolutely.
And guys, to kind of wrap this first segment, I want to talk about early hobbies, and this is going to shape the individuals that you all are today. I'm tongue-tied, but I want you to tell me just that early childhood, some of the things you were interested in, some of the things that piqued that interest.
There were only 2 things that I was ever interested in. One was dancing, and the other was playing football. And so playing football, I had always to compete with my older brothers. So it gave me a little bit of more toughness to be able to pursue that even up into the pros. Then it came with dancing. My dad literally, because there were 5 boys, they would call us the Jenkins 5. When my dad would have parties on a Friday or Saturday night, Alana, literally he would wake us up out of a dead sleep and tell us to come entertain his guests. And so a part of my finale was to do a Michael Jackson spin and then jump down on my knees like I was James Brown.
Toney.
So now I'm talking 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. So my confidence literally came from dancing and eventually taking that into football.
And we're going to pick back up on just these early backgrounds into you all's adolescence and those college years. And I encourage our viewers to tune in to the second segment of this awesome episode, where I'll be with Dr. Danielle and Toney Jenkins here discussing the Good Life Team and Fit Enterprises. The second segment of the show for today. I am host Alana McLaughlin, and you are watching Perspectives. This morning on the show, I have Toney and Dr. Danielle Jenkins here discussing the Good Life Team and Fit Enterprises. They are discussing their careers, their backgrounds, their educations, and ultimately the impact that they seek to leave on local Tennessee communities. In our first segment, I set up my guests' early lives and their backgrounds, and I'm coming back in with Dr. Danielle Jenkins discussing that adolescence into her college experience. And we're talking about ultimately the impact that she and her husband seek to leave on local Tennessee communities. And Dr. Danielle, we're hopping right back in. This has been an awesome episode. Mr. Toney can dance. We done learned a lot. But Dr. Danielle, I want you to tell me about that high school experience. As a young girl, I want you to tell me how that shaped you into your college experience.
Sure. Well, when I went to high school, I was part of the busing program. So they were integrating, right? So I didn't go to high school in my local area in LA. And so one of the things I did, the education was good, but what I really had an issue with was I got older and I understood that, there was a lot of racism, even when I was in college. And so a lot of the students, the minority students, weren't called into the counseling office to talk about college. And when I was called in, it was, oh, you should go to military, or you should pick up a trade. And so that was, of course, very discouraging for me, because that's not what I chose to do. So what it did was it really propelled me and gave me the energy and the strength and the determination to show them, hey, I'm going to show you I could do this. So I went on to college. I ended up getting 4 degrees, and my last degree was at Pepperdine University with my doctorate. So, I said, I'm going to go back and find that counselor who's no longer there. But I just, it's very sad that I had that experience, and I know that wasn't just me, but other students who were experiencing that at the same time. So, I want to encourage people that, don't let what someone tells you, whether it's a counselor or a teacher, to shape you and tell you what you can and cannot do. Because sometimes someone can take that information and just cave in and say, okay, yeah, maybe I'm going to just go ahead and do that. But if you strive that you want other things, just keep doing. Don't let someone discourage you from doing what you want to do.
And thank you for that, because I even needed to be poured into like that, Dr. Danielle. And Toney, set up that high school experience and tell me kind of what you experienced into college. Excuse me.
Alrighty, fantastic. Well, from my experience, again, going in that transition of wanting to be a dancer / football athlete, because that's where the prestige of all my other brothers came from. And so for me, out of four out of the 5 of my brothers, I was the only one that actually went to the same high school all 4 years. Because my father was in the military, we kept moving around. And so for me, my high school experience is what shaped me.
Yes, sir.
Because I went from being in my older brother's shadow to now actually becoming what I felt like the man.
Yes, sir.
Being able to play football, there was extra privilege given to me. And so that experience started forming the lifestyle that I wanted to have going into college, wanting to play football, and then eventually making my way as a free agent with the Dallas Cowboys. It was an experience that was shaped in my freshman year of high school.
Yes, sir.
In my high school, we were the first team to ever go undefeated, whether on any level. So again, now I'm identifying myself as a winner. Now through high school, we didn't win every game, but I played with some phenomenal athletes, had a lot of great football mentors at my high school that eventually went on and play in the pros. So there was a guide for me to follow. And getting into college up at Utah State.
Yes, sir.
Again, being an athlete, I know that my experience wasn't the experience of a lot of the other players.
Yes, sir.
But what it did was begin to shape my leadership to be able to encourage other people. Again, everybody's experience wasn't mine, but I never wanted to leave anybody behind. So that's what my experience was like.
And I want to kind of jump through college and into those pro ball years. Tell me about that mental experience. And we just have to highlight that, and I want to lead into you stepping away from that in the establishment of Fit Enterprises.
Fantastic. Well, my stint in the NFL was very short. And for a lot of athletes, the NFL literally stands for not for long. Mine was shorter than that. I was given an opportunity as a free agent to play with the Dallas Cowboys.
Yes, sir.
And I never got a chance to put the star on my helmet simply because of contract issues. And so being on waivers
Yes,
for
sir.
a year, I never got a chance to play. And so with the establishment and really not having a guy to go from college to the pros,
Yes, sir.
I was a very prideful guy. I had never really been on a football team that I wasn't a star player, so I didn't understand the profession of the NFL. And so I literally asked the ownership of the Dallas Cowboys to either play me or trade me. And they said quickly, Mr. Jenkins, your services are no longer needed
They're like, "You're
here
outta
at
here."
the Cowboys. And so it left me on a journey. Reggie White,
Yes, sir.
the late, great Reggie White,
Yes,
the
sir.
Minister of Defense, was a personal friend of mine and invited me to start training with him. I went up to Philadelphia, got a chance to get invited back to official camp. But the morning I was supposed to leave at 6 a.m., the offensive coordinator called me at 3 in the morning and said, Tony, you had to go with someone with more experience.
No.
So with that, my NFL opportunities were behind me. So then, just like we opened up this show in prayer,
Yes, sir.
I had to ask God, what is now my next steps? Because I ate, slept, drank, dreamed, everything was football. And now we had to get on to the second half of what God had called me to do.
And in the midst of this, I know that you've met Dr. Danielle, and I know I kind of heard off camera about how you guys met. But Dr. Danielle, I want you to share that story, and that's how we're going to kind of close the second segment. Tell me about meeting the Toney Jenkins.
The Toney Jenkins. Well, it was actually a very funny story, but I met him on the sidewalk. And so I was actually, him and his brother owned a personal gym, and I live in the area, and I was actually looking for a barbershop for my son, and he didn't know that. He is so sweet. He says, hey, are you lost? Can I help you? I think that was his way of flirting. So I said, no, I'm just looking for a barbershop for my son. And he says, well, you know, he says, I have a personal gym here. Let me show you the gym. And if you ever want to come work out. So me being cocky, I said, do I look like I need to work out? So we started laughing, and, you know, and he gave me his business card. And literally, I did not call him at all. 3 months later, I was looking for a church home, and I walked into the church, and I saw him in the aisle. He was an usher. And so I was like, okay, all right, he's an usher. I had to make sure that that he was working and serving, right? And so I walked up to him, and the funniest thing is, I walked to him, I said, do you remember me? I'm the girl from the sidewalk. And it so didn't sound right saying that in church. But we hugged, and he's like, hey, and we literally remained friends for about 3 years, and then we started dating after that. So, yep, that's our story, how we met.
And there's no denying that that's the Lord in the Lord's house.
Yes,
Absolutely.
And y'all, in our final segment, we're going to pick back up on you guys' togetherness and the impact that you guys have had together on Nashville communities, on communities across the country. And I encourage our viewers to tune into the final segment of Perspectives, where Toney and Dr. Danielle Jenkins will be here to discuss the Good Life team, Fit Enterprises, and ultimately the impact that they seek to leave on Tennessee communities. The show for today. I am host Alana McLaughlin, and you are watching Perspectives. This morning on the show, I've had Toney and Dr. Danielle Jenkins here to discuss the Good Life team and Fit Enterprises. They've discussed their backgrounds, their early educations, some of the experiences that they've had as adolescents and as young adults. And in this final segment, we're just going to really take an examination, take a look at the work that they do, the mission behind that work, in ways that local Tennessee communities can support them. And Toney, we're hopping right back in. Fit Enterprises encompasses a lot, and I want you to tell me the idea of this, the mission of this, and the establishment of these different businesses.
Fantastic. Well, in my 20s, I was a resident of Nashville, and I had some of the best business mentors that I've ever had coming out of this city. And there was an experience that really began to shape my business life outside of football. I was in the staffing industry and had an opportunity to be a regional vice president for a company, a conglomerate out of California. They sold the company without informing us here in Nashville. And so what happened is, one of the founders of the company that bought ours came into Nashville, spent a week with my staff, and on Friday morning they fired me. With that, because of the business mentors that I had in this city, I made phone calls. I found one of my mentors who said, Toney, if our companies still want to do business with you, I will partner with you and we will start our own company. So at 8 o'clock in the morning, I was fired. By 3 in the afternoon, I had my own company. And that was the beginning of my entrepreneurial spirit. And since then, Alana, God has just continued to flourish us.
And I want you to tell me about it. I want to break down Fit Enterprises, and we're going to lead into some of the books that you both have written. And I want to start with Fit for the Soul. This is also how you guys kind of met. But I want you to tell me about the establishment of Fit for the Soul and into the other businesses that encompass Fit Enterprises.
Fantastic. So back in the early 90s, well, early 2000s, there was a book called Soup for the Soul. And it was a phenomenon as far as reading and best-selling book. And so because I was now involved with personal training, I literally got inspired one morning to have Fit for the Soul when it came to my personal training business. Yes, in that time frame is when I met this beautiful young lady on the sidewalk. and that was the beginning of another season of creativity for me. When I was at church ushering, and when I saw her, again, that inspiration of what I wanted to have, but didn't know how to achieve it. But she stuck around close enough to where eventually we became more than just friends.
And Dr. Danielle, tell me about your experiences within Fit Enterprises, some of the work that you do into the book that you've written.
Yes, well, you know, Toney was always an entrepreneur. For me, for myself, I was a counselor for 30 years. And, you know, people talk about working that 9 to 5. I love what I did. It was very rewarding. But when I met Toney, he really started giving me vision and started seeing, hey, there's other things that we can do. And we started branching out, and we started our financial services company that we've done for almost 12 years now. And being together, and I think having that support system with each other really empowered us better as a unit to be able to expand our vision and do things in our communities. And now we're doing things across in different states. We, you know, travel, share financial literacy, make sure that people are educated and understand how money works, because no one is doing this in our communities. And that led me to even that expansion. I'm like, you know what, there's more that we can do, which led me to write my book on leadership. It's Leadership Principles, Animal Instincts, and looking at how everyone has leadership in them. We just have to pull it out. So the book is for those who are leaders, those who want to be leaders, those that are leaders but want to be better leaders. So all of that stems from us coming together as one and supporting each other and inspiring each other to do more in the community, and we have each other's back and each other's support. And, you know, I encourage him, he encourages me, and we just keep getting bigger and bigger, and these doors are opening. I mean, thank you. We're here. We're able to share here as well. And people are just opening doors saying, share your message, teach people, and that's what we're here to do.
And Toney, before we get into your newest book with Les Brown, I want to talk about this book in your hand. And I want to talk about just that same background, that same collaboration with Dr. Danielle in an effort to produce this book.
So with this book, The 7 Keys to Fit Success, Alana, what God showed me was that when I aspired as a little kid to be a football player, there were certain things that I had to experience in order to achieve that. One of our mentors from a farm, Mr. Eric Thomas, they call him the hip hop preacher, he said to us after an event, you have to do this financial literacy thing for our culture.
Yes, sir.
But one of the things he also said is that you can't be 21 without turning 21 years old. There's a patience in this process. In my book, The 7 Keys to Fit Success, I talk about the 7 keys that will unlock every door to success if you just put them into practice. So the first one is faith, positive self-talk, and you gotta have belief. If you strive to do something, there are always going to be what we call haters.
Yes, sir.
You have to be able to silence those critics through your faith. You have to have patience and diligence to be able to pursue your dream. This didn't happen overnight. If I were to ask you how long did it take you to get to this platform, what would you tell me?
14 years.
14 years. It took 14 years of faith, belief, and positive self-talk when there were others who didn't believe in you. We have 2 of the 7 keys. What I can tell you is this book will unlock all of those things. And the last one in this book is that you have to have financial literacy. Yes. How many entertainers, athletes, and other highly successful people do we know in our culture that have had riches, but because they didn't have financial literacy, they lost just about everything? We want to change that narrative, and that's why we teach financial literacy across the country.
And Toney, I want this to segue into your newest book, The Comeback. I want you to tell me a little bit about that.
Fantastic. Through the opportunities through our financial services company, my wife had the privilege of sharing the stage with Les Brown back in Los Angeles at the historical Wilshire Ebell Theater back in February. Through that process, I had a chance to meet Les and his son, and it spawned into a relationship that we just wrote a book together along with 15 other phenomenal authors. And so The Comeback is a book for anyone who's had some type of setback or failure. Now it's time for you to get up, grow up, stand up, and come back.
And guys, in our about last 2 minutes, this is amazing. In our last 2 minutes of this segment, I want to talk about ways that our Nashville viewers and our Tennessee communities and communities across the country can support you and can connect with you.
Fantastic.
Tell me a little about that.
Here in Nashville, I am so excited because we are establishing the first Nashville Financial Literacy Center. We are excited about it. We're going to have the community to be able to come to our offices, learn how to save, grow, protect their money, and leave a strong financial legacy. And this is something we're giving away to the community. So it's not going to be a fee or a charge. We want to educate you. We want young men, young women to become a part of wealth in this nation. We know that this city is one of the best cities to live in. But we also know there are about 64% of Americans that are still living paycheck to paycheck.
Yes, sir. Right.
Our message is to help young people create multi-handed income instead of trying to rely and live off of a single-handed income.
And tell me websites, tell me ways that people can kind of contact y'all.
Very simple. AskDrDanielle.com.
And that's it?
That's
it. AskDr.Danielle.com.
I love it.
Yes.
And I want to thank y'all for just sharing time with me. And I want to thank you all for the work that you're doing in the community. And to our viewers, I want to encourage you to keep up with Toney and with Dr. Danielle. You can visit my website, AlanaMcLaughlin.com, to hear more about this couple, to hear more about the books that they've written, and to find some links to be able to connect with them. And I want to thank our community for just allowing me this space to just share one more perspective. Good morning.